Have you ever noticed how the longer you hold on to someone toxic, the more you lose pieces of yourself? You try to fix, to please, to make things work, thinking if you just try a little harder, they'll finally treat you right. But what if I told you that the moment you stop holding on is the moment you start coming back to life? It's like removing a leech that's been feeding off you quietly. It never screamed, never asked. It just drained you slowly while pretending to stick around. The moment you pull it off, it doesn't cry in pain. It panics, not because it lost you, but because it lost control. That's what happens when you cut off a toxic person. They don't miss your presence. They miss the power they had over your peace. Because while you're busy keeping the peace, trying not to upset anyone, you have a choice. Keep tolerating what drains you or finally choose yourself. And when you do, everything changes. The noise stops, the energy returns, and you begin to grow again. So what really happens when you walk away from a toxic person? What shifts when you stop explaining, stop defending, and stop accepting less than you deserve? Stay with me, because what happens next might just change everything. Let's get started. Your mind becomes clear and your voice returns. Let's talk about something most people don't expect when they cut a toxic person out of their life: the silence that follows. Not just silence in your phone or home, but silence in your mind. The constant noise, second-guessing, decoding hidden meanings, preparing for someone's next mood swing. It all starts to fade. And in that stillness, something powerful happens. You start hearing your own voice again. Here's the truth. Toxic people don't just create chaos around you. They create chaos inside you. They take up mental space. You start overthinking every word you say, wondering if you offended them, disappointed them, or triggered something. Their reactions become your compass. You adjust yourself constantly, not to grow, but just to avoid the next explosion or guilt trip. Over time, your own thoughts get buried under theirs. But when you finally walk away, when you remove their influence, that mental pressure releases. The noise stops. You no longer wake up bracing for tension. You no longer replay conversations trying to figure out where it went wrong. Without realizing it, your own voice, the one that had gone quiet, starts coming back. This is where Stoic wisdom comes alive. Marcus Aurelius said, "Peace comes when you no longer invite chaos." And Seneca reminds us, "The soul is strengthened in solitude." That solitude you feared isn't loneliness, it's healing. It's where your real clarity returns. Because without their influence clouding your judgment, you finally start to remember what you think, what you feel, what matters to you. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him James, had a long-term friendship that quietly controlled him. His friend never shouted, never threatened, but his words always left James questioning himself. Anytime James made a choice, there was a sarcastic remark. Anytime he succeeded, there was a passive-aggressive dig. James didn't even notice how much he had changed until they had a falling out. And after it ended, that's when it hit him. His anxiety dropped. His mind felt still. He started trusting his decisions again, not because someone approved, but because he finally felt like himself again. So how do you get there? First, recognize the weight they had on your mind. Second, protect your mental space like it's sacred. And third, let the silence stay. That quiet isn't emptiness, it's your voice returning. At the end of the day, cutting off a toxic person doesn't just remove a problem, it brings back something even more important: your clarity, your confidence, and your inner peace. You regain emotional energy. let's talk about something most people don't notice until it happens. How much emotional energy you get back after cutting off a toxic person. When you're around someone who constantly complains, manipulates, guilt trips, or creates drama, you become emotionally drained without even realizing it. You leave every conversation feeling heavier, second-guessing yourself, or mentally exhausted. But when that person is no longer in your life, suddenly everything feels lighter. And not just your schedule, your mind, your mood, your entire emotional state shifts. Here's the truth. Toxic people don't just waste your time, they wear down your emotional stamina. You spend so much of your energy managing their moods, avoiding their reactions, or trying to make sense of their behavior that you don't have anything left for yourself. You think you're helping them, supporting them, being the bigger person, but the reality is you're slowly burning out. Once they're gone, that emotional bandwidth comes rushing back. You realize you can breathe deeper, think clearer, feel more at ease. This is where Stoic wisdom offers clarity. Epictetus said, "He who guards his peace guards his power." And that's exactly what emotional energy is. Power. It fuels your clarity, your discipline, your patience, your ability to show up for your own life. When you give that away to someone who constantly drains you, you weaken your grip on what really matters. But when you protect your peace, you protect your strength. Let me share a story. A man I know, let's call him Brian, was in a friendship that slowly started to take more than it gave. His friend was always in crisis mode. Every conversation was about some new drama, some new person to blame, or some way the world was out to get him. Brian tried to be there. He listened, advised, reassured. But over time, he noticed something. After every interaction, he felt emotionally exhausted. It was like his friend was offloading his chaos and Brian was absorbing it all. Eventually, Brian made a quiet decision. No confrontation, no dramatic exit. He just stopped engaging in the cycle. And almost immediately, he noticed a shift. He felt more focused. His mind wasn't tangled in someone else's problems. He had more energy for the people and projects that actually mattered to him. That's when it hit him. He'd been giving away his emotional energy to someone who didn't value it. So how do you regain that energy? First, recognize the drain. Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with someone. Second, set firm emotional boundaries. You're not a dumping ground for chaos. And finally, value your peace enough to protect it. Because your energy is limited and it deserves to go where it fuels your life, not where it gets stolen. At the end of the day, walking away from toxic energy isn't just about losing someone, it's about finding yourself again. And once that emotional weight lifts, you wonder why you ever carried it in the first place. You realize how much you tolerated. Let's talk about a realization that often comes long after the damage is done. How much you actually tolerated while trying to keep the peace. When you finally cut off a toxic person and get some distance, you begin to see things for what they really were. The constant guilt tripping, the passive-aggressive comments, the subtle manipulation disguised as care or concern. At the time, you brushed it off. You told yourself they didn't mean it, or that maybe you were overreacting. But now, with space and clarity, you start to see the pattern, and it's undeniable. Here's the truth. Distance reveals what closeness once blurred. When you're in the middle of a toxic relationship, whether it's with a partner, a friend, or even a family member, you start normalizing unhealthy behavior.
You adapt, you make excuses, you shrink yourself to keep things calm, and slowly your standards erode. But once you step away, it's like turning the volume down on chaos. You're no longer distracted by the noise, and you can finally recognize what was actually happening. You see how much of your energy went into managing their emotions, avoiding conflict, and sacrificing your own needs just to keep things together. This is where Stoic wisdom offers something powerful. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What you allow is what will continue." Stop feeding the fire of false peace. That false peace, the illusion of calm while you're
Quietly suffering is one of the most dangerous places to be. It convinces you that things aren't that bad, even while your boundaries are being broken day after day. But once you stop feeding it, once you step away, the truth becomes clear. You tolerated far too much for far too long. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Claire, had been in a friendship for years that always felt a little off. Her friend constantly made backhanded compliments, guilted her for spending time with other people, and always played the victim. When confronted, Claire stayed quiet to avoid drama. She told herself it was just part of the friendship. But when life shifted and they naturally drifted apart, Claire found herself feeling lighter. Then came the realization. She had been tolerating emotional manipulation for years, all in the name of keeping the peace. So how do you stop tolerating what doesn't serve you? First, honor what the distance is showing you. If clarity comes when someone's gone, trust it. Second, raise your standards. What you allow will shape your life. And third, never trade your peace for someone else's comfort again. At the end of the day, cutting off a toxic person isn't just about walking away, it's about waking up. And once you see how much you tolerated, you'll never settle for less than you're worth again. They try to come back, but not for the right reasons. Let's talk about something that happens more often than people admit. Once you cut off a toxic person, they almost always try to come back. But here's the part that's easy to overlook. They don't come back for the right reasons. They come back because they miss the control, the attention, or the chaos that you once provided. And the problem is, when they come back, they often don't realize they've lost the power they once had over you. Here's the truth. When a toxic person comes back, it's not because they want to grow with you. It's because they want to reestablish dominance. They want you to feel guilty or insecure enough to let them in again, but only on their terms. And that's when it becomes clear that walking away was the right choice. Because when you see someone for who they really are, when you see through the manipulation and the excuses, you'll realize that no amount of promises will make up for what they took from you. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Lily, had a toxic friendship with someone who always knew how to push her buttons. They'd go through phases of being distant and then reconnect, only for the cycle to start again. One day, Lily cut ties for good, and for the first time in years, she felt at peace. But months later, that friend came back, apologizing, promising change. Lily could have fallen for it. She could have let them back in, but she didn't. Because once you've seen the truth, there's no going back. And the truth is, a toxic person doesn't change for the right reasons. They change because they miss the control, not because they respect you. So how do you handle this? First, trust the peace you found without them. Second, recognize their return is more about them than it is about you. And third, stick to your boundaries. You've already seen the damage. There's no reason to
isn't just about moving on, it's about seeing clearly. And once you've seen the truth, there's no reason to let the